Speaking of faithful and true gospel, I remember the first time Spencer got caught in a lie. I didn't know what to do with it. Spencer it turns out, it was a pretty good lie. I can remember it was a really big lie. It was an awesome one. What Spencer did, it's not the first time, but it's one that comes to mind. Do you remember your little side hustle at Oak Heights Elementary?
Oh, that was a baller.
Huh? You were big baller. What were you doing?
So Lord of the Rings, the first one came out.
First Lord of the Rings for the people on the thousands of people who watch this on.
And the ring was a big deal, and Mom, being a florist, had these gold rings that you tie around the bottom.
But they weren't gold rings. What were they made of?
Well, they bent easy, so whatever that metal is.
They were plastic with a gap in them.
You want me?
Yes, no, listen, go ahead, but make it quick.
Okay, and I took those rings and put them on a hairpin and then went to the playground and sold them for $0.25 each, saying that they were Lord of the Rings.
So, it did. So we get called to Mrs. Amon. Michelle, do you remember that? Yeah. Oh, she's not as excited. I was a little bit excited because on the one hand, I was torn. On the one hand, I thought, well, I should punish this child for lying, correct? But on the other hand, when your child develops a skill they can use the rest of their life, you want lying. Now, you guys are going to go home and some of you are going to say, oh, my pastor said lying is good. No, it was a joke to lead into this. Lying is common. Can we all agree on that? Lying is very common, and I can only get my information off of the internet, and so here's where I found this. It says on average, a person tells 2 what they would call real lies. I like that term, right? Real lies. You will tell on average 2 real lies a day. A day. Now, teenagers really skew the curve, and that's actually part of the data. The teenagers lie all the time, James. In fact, James, could you come up here? We have some things we want to show you that we caught you in. Oh, whatever. Way to go. Eating Charleston chews for breakfast, and you wonder, way to go, wrestler. Here we go. 2 real lies. Real lies would mean what? Real lies would mean something that I say to you that is an absolute fabrication. That's just not true. Can we all be honest in here for just a second? Because I've said that since we started this. I may not always be correct, and I always welcome if I'm biblically wrong, not your preference, but if I'm biblically wrong, let me know. But the one thing we said from the very beginning is we will always, at the very least, commit to being honest. Does that make sense? Yeah. Have you ever walked away from a conversation? I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and said, why did I say that? It's not even true. Raise your hand if you've ever walked away from a conversation and said, why? I didn't. Pete's the only saint in here, apparently. Thanks a lot, Pete. No, I can see Pete. That's why I always pick on him. He's one of the tallest guys around. He slouches, but I still see him. 2 real lies a day. The other part of that, though, is we tell up to 11 on average soft lies. Soft lies, just things that aren't necessarily 100% true. So here's the breakdown. 21% of these are told, and I agree with this one. I think the number would be higher in my life. 21% of the lies we tell are told to avoid being around people. Anybody agree with that, though? It's like, well, that's okay. I don't really like being around people that much. So it's probably higher for me. Oh, well, I can't. Oh, we have something else planned. Some of you are going back to the times you've asked to hang out with me. Not you. 20. Oh, here we go. Just 20. Not you. No, not you, Lily. No, stop it. 20% trying to be funny. A prank. You're just trying to add some levity to a situation. 14% of the lies we tell, of the 11 lies that are soft lies, well, they're actually to protect ourselves from what we perceive to be physical or emotional harm. Right? We know that I just have to say this because it's not worth the fallout of whether I tell them the truth. So let's just get through this moment. I don't mean a big one, just you know what I mean, right? Just, this person's going to go off. 11%, though, of the lies we tell to protect someone else. Like, did you hear about little Timmy, little Bobby? And you're like, no, I didn't hear about that at all. But you do have a story, but you're protecting someone. So that's a soft lie. But the number one reason people lie is actually, and all the data shows this, the number one people lie is low self-esteem. It's a low self-esteem issue. They don't believe what they truly bring is sufficient to being viewed in the way that they wish to be viewed. Now, I want to be very clear about this because some of you are going to go, as I start to say, you go, oh, I'm not this person. I'm not at all. I don't even like myself. I have all these issues. Well, guess what? You tell those lies to keep that narrative about yourself too. You're going to hear that we have a narrative that we all use words to manipulate people into seeing us the way we want to be seen. Absolutely, most of us want to be seen as the best and the brightest. But I live with some of you, I only live with Michelle. Not you, baby. But I've lived life with some of you, and you've lived life with me, and there are seasons we go through where the pity party is on, and we want people to participate. So we still tell that narrative. And so what do? For the most part, though, it's a failure to be accepted is what we're worried about. And a failure to be accepted we call what? Rejection. We live our lives in fear of rejection. We were created for relationships. And so, if that's the way we were designed, we fear that if they were to truly know us, they wouldn't truly like us. And so, we embellish, we exaggerate in an attempt to manipulate people into viewing us in the way that we prefer as worthy of acceptance. We manipulate people with our lies so that people will see us in the way that we prefer, as worthy of acceptance. Or in 2024, I can say this, or culturally, specifically, because you do realize, for those of you who want me to speak more broadly, but absolutely painfully about cultural issues, you do realize, of course, that those issues are made up of individual people. You get that? And those individual people, they show up here expecting something, and so oftentimes, when you want me to say, I can't believe the world is this way, you're all going to hell, I'm here to say the world's not meant to be this way, and thank God that we all can spend eternity in heaven. And so that's my message. But I will say this, though. Many people lie, many people embellish, many people exaggerate as a way to force us to participate in the narrative they wish to create about the world and their role in it. But I need you to understand that nobody sets out to lie, to embellish, to exaggerate, to be hated. Do you get that? They all, in some way, feel as if this is the way I can gain acceptance. This is the way that I can actually have other people view me the way I crave. And this deep act, many times, a physical act of self-preservation for some people, well, it transcends the physical act of I want people to love me and hold me. It's something deeply internal. It transcends the physical, and it moves into the emotional. It moves into our mental health and our well-being, you see, and I'll say this continually. We were all created for relationships. And so the greatest desire that we have is intimacy with others. I tell people all the time, in the absence of... Did the kids leave? In the absence of true intimacy, we'll just have sex. That's the world we live in. In the absence of being truly known, we'll jump right into the least intimate act that God has given it. And I'm not saying spiritually, it's very deeply intimate, and I don't want to go past that for some of you who have trouble with what I'm saying. But you married people in here, do you not agree that the intimacy that you have with your spouse, the one that you have, is absolutely deeper than a physical connection? And the physical connection follows it as a sense of commitment to the actual, you guys get what I'm saying, right? We crave deeply intimacy with others, so much so that we'll accept, we'll create, we'll pursue, absolutely, the cheapest substitute available, because our greatest desire is to be loved. So far, if any of you think that's not mine, well, again, that's the narrative you're creating. In fact, one of the things Glenn and I said about 5 times a day, each of us said, well, I don't care about that this morning. I don't care about that. If we didn't care about it, we wouldn't say I don't care about it. If I literally don't care about something, I just listen. When I say about someone, well, I don't care about that, and I say it all the time, I'm trying to get rid of it, because when I say to you guys, I don't care if you disagree or agree, I strongly care if you agree or disagree. What I'm trying to communicate is it doesn't shape the way I view it, but I strongly care whenever I say I don't care. Haven't you heard that? I have no idea where I'm at in my notes, but watch me play it off like a pro. So, many of us, I didn't need your help. Watch this. So, many of us at some point I hate. So many of us, even those who are growing up, is it not true? We want to be loved, we want to be accepted, that we want to be cherished, we crave intimacy, but at some point in our life, we become convinced that the real us, with all of our brokenness, our imperfections, our inabilities, our blemishes, our baggage that we bring, heck, our bags that we bring, we begin convinced. I wasn't looking at anybody when I did that. We become convinced that the things that we bring to the table, the real us, is in danger of rejection. And so what do? I'll even say this. In the Garden of Eden, they walked, and so look at this and look at what's being conveyed in the story. Some of you guys get so hung up on the details that you miss the point. Our first parents, without reservation, were fully known by their Father and were in full fellowship, fully loved, fully accepted. And you know who they didn't think about? Themselves. Their focus was on this relationship with God. Their focus was on God. Immediately upon them thinking they're going to worship something else, they began to shift the focus from worshiping something else and began to worship themselves. And immediately said, oh no, I've got to cover up. He said, oh, they're naked, and so cartoons put a fig leaf on them. You know what? No. Emotionally, psychologically naked. No barriers between them and God. They were fully seen by God, but for the first time aware of their blemishes and imperfections, and thus began the distance that we live in today. That's the point of the first parents. That's the point of our story. The real us, we feel, is in danger of rejection. And so we do more than lie. And again, those of you going, aren't we going through 3 John? For those of you who said, I couldn't get enough messages out of the shortest book in the Bible, blame yourselves. The real us, we live in danger of rejection and fear of it, and so we do more than lie. We manipulate. We construct a narrative around ourselves because essentially, as I've said before, many times, and those of you who go here enough, you're going to realize I repeat things time and time again. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, I was always trying early on to have a hook, to be original, to get a good story, a good laugh. And then somebody challenged me, as opposed to trying to be original, why don't I just try to be helpful? Isn't that crazy? When you go to a physician, do you want him to try to be original or be helpful? Helpful. So I'm going to say these things, and one of them I say a lot is, we as humans are essentially storytellers. It's how we interact with the world. It's how we make sense of it. I want you to think about right now. Right now, when you watch the world around you, you interpret it as a part of a story. You know who the good guys are. You know who the bad guys are. You know who the victims are. You know who the heroes are. That's just how it is. We have to make sense of this world, and we do it in a narrative of a story. And within each of our stories, who is the main character? We are. All of us are. The kids, the youth today, they say things like this. Well, they wouldn't know because they're both, she's on her phone and he's doing something. I don't even know. I know you're not on your phone, but they don't know that. And they think kids are always on their phone. I'm lying. It's a life skill. The kids today say they're giving off main character vibes, right? I'm not supposed to say that because I'm too old and I ruin it, which is why I try to use all the lingo. It's because I love to ruin it. Like, oh, you ruined that word. But main character vibes. All of us think we're the main character in our story. Every one of us. And not only are you the main character in this story of the world that you have, I will tell you, and some of you are going to go, not me. Well, stick with me. You are the hero of your story. Even if your story is that you're the victim, you're still the hero. Even if your story is, and some of you need to get over this, that you're the victim. Now, I'm not saying things weren't done to you, but I am saying because of an amazing thing that's been done for you, you don't have to remain where you've been. Some of us need to get past the fact over what we've had done to us, but we don't want people. You ever meet someone like that, talk to someone like that? If you've never spoken to someone like that, chances are you're that. They start to go, well, you know what, you have the ability to pull yourself up. You don't understand what he did. You have the ability to do this another choice, but you don't know what she did. I get it. I'm not trying to invalidate that. But there is a godly sorrow, not the shame of a false victim or a real victim, but a godly sorrow that can lead you out of this thing, and so you don't have to stay there. But you are still the hero of your story, and I will prove it. When there is conflict within your story, I want you to consider this, and be honest. No show of hands, but be honest. When there is conflict within your story, within your life, don't we judge other people by their actions? Don't we say they did this to us? Don't we start running down a litany of the offenses that they've done? We judge other people by their actions. Oh, you guys already knew that. Yeah, it's up there. But we judge ourselves by our intentions. You're the hero. You see, they're bad, but you didn't mean it that way. It's not what I meant. I'll judge you by what you said to me, right? I can't believe that they called me that name. I can't believe they spoke like that. And then somebody go, well, you did say that. Yeah, but I didn't mean it. We're the hero of our story, and the hero must always have the best of intentions. Not only that, we give ourselves the benefit of our circumstances, don't we? We do it all the time. We're the hero of the story, so we give ourselves the benefit of our circumstances. I was having a bad day. I had a bad day. I had a bad dad. I was hangry. We give ourselves the benefit of our circumstances, but we define the rest of the world by their actions. The things they did to us, how they treated us, from the way they speak to us, this gets me, to the way they drive. The way they drive, to the way they stand, to the way they dress, to the way they force me to go into the checkout line. And that's stupid because I don't really work safe. So go back to you guys. We define the rest of the world by their actions, but we define ourselves by our intentions. Is that not true? And essentially what we do, we give grace to ourselves, although it's cheap grace, while denying it to everyone else around us. When you create this narrative based upon your intentions, but you're judging other people by their actions, and I want you guys to consider this. We give ourselves cheap grace, but we deny true grace to all those around us. But the strategies we employ to defend and protect this narrative that we have about ourselves, and again, you all have one. And if right now you're telling yourself, I don't care what other people think, I don't have a narrative, well, that's your narrative. That you're the one above caring, that you're the one it doesn't touch, but you still will tell everybody, I don't care. One time, Ravi Zacharias, who, if you know the story, his ministry suffered some hits at the end through some personal failings. But Ravi Zacharias was one of the greatest Christian thinkers of the 20th century, even though, yes, the end of his life didn't end the way that most of us would wish. And those of you who are my age or above, you would know that every time I say that, it's going to be one of two things with a man. It's going to be money or it's going to be sex. So it ended up that he was inappropriate. But he did say in his ministry, he did say this thing. And I'm just glad that the Bible is filled with nobody who ever did horrible things but was still loved by God. Ravi Zacharias was in a conference. He's doing a thing on logic, how logic fits, that God is the God of logic. And somebody stood up at one of these fancy places he's at, one of these kids who always stand up. Can we all agree in here that if you go to a conference that is being held, they paid thousands of dollars to bring a smart guy in? Don't step up to the microphone and think you're going to trick them. Right? The people who stand up, Ben Shapiro's up there or Jordan Peterson, and they go, this little snot-nosed kid gets up there and they think they're going to say something he hasn't heard. I'm like, oh. So this guy stood up and he said, you know what, Mr. Zacharias, I don't care what you have to say because nothing really matters. And Ravi Zacharias said, obviously you felt it mattered enough for you to stand up and say that nothing matters, disproving your very point when you stood up. The minute that you say, I don't care about anything, you just use the effort to say, I care about something. This narrative that I'm above it even. So we judge people every day by what they say, but by our intentions. We give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but the strategies that we employ to still defend and protect this narrative that we have about ourselves, to insulate us from really what? Let's just start with it now. To insulate us from the truth. This narrative we have to insulate us, to protect ourselves from the truth, whether, again, that narrative is you're the hero or you're the victims. These strategies, and make no mistake about them, you have been taught these strategies work. or you would not still be using them. You might have been taught by an abusive father, a distant mother, your first, second, third, or current spouse. You have been taught, though, this is what you have to have, this narrative. And so you employ these strategies, and they go far beyond just lies. And here is the word, because some of you guys want me to be more religious, right? Here's the word to the church today. This is a hard word. And if you guys are new to the churches, what did you say? Here's the point. The depth to which we employ these strategies is an indicator of the depth of our relationship with capital T, the truth, Jesus Christ. The degree to which we employ strategies to defend and protect the narrative we wish to manipulate other people into believing about us, the degree to which we use them, the degree to which and the depth that we pursue them is the absolute indicator of the true depth of your absolute, true relationship with Jesus Christ. I'll prove it. Jesus, in his longest recorded message in the Bible, which we call the Sermon on the Mount, which is essentially, think of it this way, if those of you who wish, you go, I want the 10 Commandments in every classroom, I want the 10 Commandments in every church, stop, please. Stop. The 10 Commandments, all of God's laws, all of God's heart is now written where? On our hearts. If you want to know what it's like to be a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, look at the Sermon on the Mount. When Jesus is saying this stuff, he is saying, if you are going to be a citizen of my kingdom and carry my heart in your heart, these are the ways that you will act. Not because you're a legalist, not because you're reading a tablet, but because you have my heart. And so this is what you will see. And in that, he says this in Matthew 5:37. Make sure your statement is yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond these is of evil origin. I have heard that misused to abuse me in the past, and we've had that conversation. This is not a personality thing. I can remember, and I'll share this, I was first came to my real faith at 24, and I know the other was real too. That's why I say I came to Jesus sometime between 9 and 24. Right? My story is like much of yours. At 9, I knew it was true. At 9, I knew I didn't want to go to hell. At 24, I realized that it wasn't about that. It was about Jesus, and it was amazing, and I could not do it. I had to pursue it. And this may come as a shock to most of you who only know me as a reserved, quiet individual, but in those days, you know what? Play along with my narrative. But in those days, I was even more excited than I am now. I really was, and I was just everywhere. And I was at a Bible study, and I was so excited about it, and I just kept talking and kept saying everything, and I was just having so much excitement what I was learning. And at the end of it, a guy, and I've shared this up here, he gave me a scripture, and I was so excited because I respected this guy. So immediately, right, I went home because we didn't have Google, and I opened my Bible right then, and it said in the abundance of words there is sin. Thanks for helping me out, buddy. All I heard from that was, don't be you. Don't be excited. This is not that. This has nothing to do with anything other than yes, yes, no, no. This has nothing to do with that, and yet it's been used as an instrument to damage and hurt people who have passion. It's not what it means at all. But it does bear us looking at, because it says anything else is from the evil one. Anything else than this yes, yes, no, no concept is the enemy conspiring with my flesh to do me harm. What is this? Powerful. Because our default is to manipulate. Our default is to manipulate people into participating into the version of the world I prefer. And I'll use anything. I'll defend myself from this attack on my story. In fact, I will say that. If someone is attacking my story, do you not realize when it is? Do you know what you become when someone attacks your version? You become defensive. Have you not realized, like me, when I'm not defensive, I'm pretty healthy? When somebody comes up and says, hey, Don, man, you interrupt too much. I'm like, I really do. I'm working on that. It doesn't bother me because guess what I do sometimes? I interrupt too much, and so I'm working on that. And I'm like, that's fine. When someone comes up and says, hey, Don, you interrupt too much. But no, I don't. No, I do not. I don't interrupt. I have important things to say. When someone comes up and says, you interrupt too much, I'm like, no, no, no. You don't say that. Then I become, well, you do. Don't you see the difference? You become defensive when someone pokes holes, even if it's true, especially when it's true, into your narrative about yourself. Why is that? Well, what do we do because of that? I want you to think about yourself right now and not your wife and not your husband and not your children. It's going to be hard to do. This is about you. What do you do to control the narrative and manipulate people into going along with whatever it is you have at any age? Anger. Anybody, and don't shake, don't raise your hand. Anybody ever anybody ever had to share a home with an angry spouse, an angry father, an angry, don't raise your hand. They control, don't they? The narrative about themselves because dare you say anything? How about volume? You just get louder. Anybody ever been in a relationship? Anybody ever be? Anybody ever been in a relationship with an emotional manipulator? Children even? Spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, emotional manipulation? Well, again, are you this person? Are you the one who does these things to make sure that you control what? Well, you control the narrative. Have you ever, there's a term for it now, which by the way, don't let the fact that people take terms, don't abdicate these terms. There is an actual term called gaslighting that has nothing to do with 2024. It's been there forever, and I hate it when suddenly it becomes a political buzzword and people take these things. I'll probably use it more now whenever somebody tries to steal it. Gaslighting's been around forever. All it simply means is, and I used to do it with my wife, we've talked about this without meaning to, but she would say something that I didn't like the narrative, and I would actually say to her, oh, you don't really mean that. You young men, try that. I would one-up it, though, when she'd say, well, I feel this way about that. You make me feel this way. And I would say, that's not how you really feel. This idea of discrediting people, to manipulate people, do you do that? Are you someone who essentially invalidates the responses of those around you unless it makes you comfortable? Do you control the emotional temperature in your home? You guys know what that means, right? But if you want, you control it. You want it to feel a certain way, so you make sure it's this way. Nobody else gets to speak about things because that bothers you. Or you come in and you want it up here. Because if you control the emotional thermostat in your home, like any thermostat, you will set it to your comfort level. Every time. You youngsters with dads in the home, go change the thermostat someday. It's cold. Right? You will always set it emotionally to your comfort level. Why? Because we are the main characters in our story. So let me ask a question that I heard a sermon on 20 years ago. I Googled it. It's a very common question online. There are all kinds of people who've taken this and ran with it, so much so I don't know the origin of the actual question. But again, I want to be helpful. I don't want to be original. So here's the question that I wanted to ask you today, and this may be one of the most amazing questions you'll ever be asked if you embrace it and you do some research. You may even want to ask people, but be prepared for the response. What's it like to be on the other side of you? What's it like to be on the other side of you once you pick up your first whiskey at night? What's it like to be on the other side of you when you come home from a hard day? What's it like to be on the other side of you at any age? It's not your mom, it's not your dad, it's not your husband, it's not your spouse. I'm asking, what is it like to be on the other side of you? What if you today were to stop judging yourself on your intentions? What if you were to stop giving yourself a pass on your past? Well, you don't understand. My dad didn't hug me. I wasn't breastfed. I didn't go to kindergarten. My parents got a divorce. My first wife, my second husband, my third live-in. What if instead of those passes you gave yourselves, you simply judge yourself in the way that you judge the rest of the world, which is by the absolute truth of their actions? Would you still be the hero of that story? Would you still be the hero of those people you live with? So let me ask you another very unsettling question. Is it possible? What if instead of you being the hero of your own story, you're actually the villain in somebody else's? Horrifying thought, isn't it, dads? Moms. How about wives? What if you have every reason to withhold affection from your husband, every reason based upon your past? What's it like to be on the other side of you when physical touch, words of affection are his love language? Men in here, husbands, what if you're the villain in your wife's story? Because you don't allow her freedom, you don't allow her to have her own life, your jealousy, your rage. What if you're the villain in your own wife's story? Very unsettling question, isn't it? With your children. I'm the hero. Check back in 20 years. What if you right now are the villain that's giving them the brokenness that will always cause them to try to create a narrative that I'm better than I am? The brokenness that I cannot show you my blemish. What if it's you? I am going to ask some of you, some of you, and I'll ask dads because I don't know what it's like to be a woman, although my brothers would say I'm splitting hairs. So I'll ask the dads in here. How many of you dads have had an aha moment that God gave you where you realize what an absolute villain you were being in the lives of your family? How many of you have had a moment where you saw in the mirror, I did that? I said that? I said that to my child? Do you realize that once something goes out, it doesn't matter how then you start to justify to your child, you cannot take it back. Say nothing versus say some of these things. But I'll ask again, would you still be the hero? What if instead of you being the hero of your own story, if all you did was look at how you behave and act, and you judge yourself on that, what if you are in fact the victim of someone else? So if someone else were to judge you by your actions, your comments, your tone, if you were judged by the way you make those around you feel comfortable, accepted, loved, just want to be around you. They just like having you around. If you were judged by these things, would you still be the hero? It's hurtful to have to think about these things, but it may be the most important question you could ask yourself today. Now let me ask you perhaps another question that I think is the one I've been leading into, and if God took you somewhere else, the Holy Spirit, then land there. Never let me dissuade you from what the Holy Spirit's telling you to focus on. But this is where I landed in my conversation as I was preparing this. What if you stopped thinking about you at all? Wouldn't that be amazing? What an amazing thing. What if, as opposed to all of this, you stopped considering your comfort? Do this for me. What if you stopped, and I mean in a great world, the most positive way, that you stopped even thinking, oh, me, poor victim, I can't believe I said that. What if you stopped thinking about you at all? You see, pride is an excessive love of self. Pride is an absolute focus on yourself, so much so that some people who have this story, this victim stancing that they take as a counselor, one of the things I tell them is you need to get rid of your pride. And they'll say, what are you talking about? I loathe myself. I hate myself. I'm thinking, yes, and everything you say is all about yourself. Get outside of yourself. Get rid of this pride that we have. What if there is a way that you live a life where you don't always think about you? Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that be freeing? Because focusing on yourself is more than you think. It has far greater consequences. Because loving yourself, and again, can you give me grace of what I mean by that? Obviously, we're supposed to love and have, I don't mean that. But loving yourself primarily, excessively, focusing on yourself excessively, primarily, using words and emotions to manipulate others, to think highly or even more often of you. Kids do this all the time. I, in fact, had a conversation, if you're in here, I won't say your name, but I was talking to a kid, and I said, the problem with you and your girlfriend is you've created what we call a trauma bond. Right? So if you get that, well, I'll kill myself if you break up with me. No, I'll kill myself first. Oh! And I say that knowing that the truth of it is oftentimes horrible consequences. If nothing else, years and years spent together wasted because they've actually created this trauma bond, which is this idea of manipulating someone into even thinking not highly of you, but more often of you. I need to be in your thoughts. How is this going to affect Dawn? How is this going to affect Dawn? What's Dawn going to think if I do? I got news for you. You know who Dawn thinks about more than you? Dawn. You all do. You ever an argument with a group photo over a group photo with a friend on whether or not it's a good picture? The first person you look at in a group photo is you. We judge it all by me. I am what I'm about, and I'm trying to get rid of it. The older I get, the less I think about myself, unless it is, unless it is. Don, you need to consider this. But it does more when you manipulate people. It does more when you love yourself excessively. It does more to you when you primarily focus on yourself. What you're actually doing, you're actually cheating God of the worship due Him. I want you to think of that. Highly, deeply spiritual, theological, relational point with Jesus Christ, with the Lord of all creation, with our God. When you think about yourself excessively, when you spend your days focused on your comfort, loving yourself excessively, do you know who you're cheating from the absolute love and worship that they deserve? God. It does more than you think. In fact, I would say it cheats God of the worship due Him because you've actually put yourself in God's place within your life. This is pride. Meaning that the more you focus upon yourself, and again, I want to make a distinction here. We have work to do, don't we? We have hard work to be done. Do the work. I'm here to tell you the only way that you can meet it is your goal to not be more impressive. If you really want intimacy in your life, we're going to tell you how to do it in a minute, but it is this process. Do the work. I was having a conversation with Pete Kaufman about people who don't like, and he means the church in general, the church. How some people don't like other people that show up in the church because they have a particular issue and they think they should clean up before they come in. And we were saying, we're all in the program, people. I am somewhere in my own personal cleanup program with Jesus Christ. And the only way I've been able to move past stages is I stopped thinking about me and I began to focus on Jesus Christ. And the pull and the freedom is amazing. So I'm telling you, we're all in the program. But what if you could actually find something else out of this thing? Because the more you focus on yourself, the more distance you create between God and yourself. Do all the work He asks you to do, but keep your primary focus on Christ. Because this is what happens. All of our strategies that we've perhaps unknowingly, till right now, employed within your life to manipulate, to keep people into a narrative that you wish for them to think of you, all the strategies, and some of you were given to them. Some of you, somebody this week, I was subbing, and you didn't come say hi, either one of you. But I was subbing, and a girl walked by, and she goes, "Oh, you have great handwriting." And I looked down at it, and I do have good handwriting. Mother, whose handwriting does my handwriting resemble? Do you know? My father's. Do you know why my handwriting resembles my father's? I imitated it. He had such good handwriting, right, Mother? Joe McKnight has great handwriting, so much so that I would try to make it look like his handwriting. And now here it does. I focused on what I wanted to become in this area of my life, and I eventually came to enough that you can see it. You would say, you look like your father with my handwriting. Sadly, I just spent time with my 85-year-old father, and I'm very disturbed. I do look like my father. Not the 56-year-old version. I'm aging horribly. Some of you didn't tell me. Don't. I have a different narrative. Anger, these strategies that you were given by your father, your mother, your teacher, your coach, you still emulated it. Perhaps all these strategies were unknowing, but these things that you've created, anger, unforgiveness, critical words, controlling behaviors, victim stancing, these things that you use to control the environment around you, the relationships around you, they have brought about the very result you feared, a lack of intimacy. Years ago, one of the best messages I heard by Mark up at the chapel was called Kissing Through Window Panes. And he took a window pane and he held it this way, and you can see it when it's the window pane. And his point was this. He said, so many of us live our lives so fearful of rejection, so fearful of being fully known, that we go through all the intimate acts. It looks like it's intimacy. And then he turned it sideways where you can't see the window because it's so narrow, just the pane of glass. And it would be like my wife on the other side of that thin pane and me here kissing my beautiful bride, one of my favorite things to do. You'd have to check with her if she's actually as happy about it. But I like it. But we're not really kissing at all, are we? With the window pane. And these strategies that you employ to keep people at a distance, to believe something about you that's not true, you feel better about. I can tell you, every strategy, whether it was given to you or you created on your own, it actually has brought about the result that you feared. A lack of true intimacy, a lack of being fully known and fully accepted by those within your life. And of course, that's the result. Because all of these words, according to Jesus, everything we say other than yes, yes, all these manipulations, and again, I'm not talking about words in and of themselves, all these things we do to create a narrative, to manipulate, all of them, they have their origin in evil. And the number one thing we were designed for, if you know nothing else, if you come to LifePoint, we were all designed and created for relationships. So why wouldn't you think the evil one would birth strategies to keep us from true relationships? Every one of us have been desiring for relationships, and so that's what evil seeks to destroy. So I ask you again, what's it like to be on the other side of you? What if the intimacy that you truly crave with those in your life, you're actually the villain of your own story? You're the one keeping it from happening. You're the one who has a narrative. Other people are wanting to smash this window pane, and you see them coming, and you're like, no, I can't. And you run with your window pane. I can't handle this. It's too much. I was once told by somebody I love, about another person I love, that if that person realized the damage they had done to me, it would destroy them. So you couldn't approach that person and break that window pane, because that window pane would have been replaced with a mirror, and that's what will happen. When your strategies fall and somebody comes up and they say, man, I love you, could you please let me love you, not this version of you. It's okay. In fact, the greatest thing that Michelle and I have at our life at 32 years together married is this. We laugh at each other's stupidity. Because it's not defining to me. I know me. She knows her. So when we say it, we laugh, but then we categorize it as, oh, that's what it's like to be on the other side of me. I'm going to work on that because it's a mirror when that window pane gets broken. Some of you, some of us, we're terrified of the mirror. What if I am the villain? Well, if that's your thought, you are the villain of your own story, keeping yourself from true intimacy. So I'll ask you again, what's it like being on the other side of you? It turns out, embracing the truth, capital T, it actually really will set you free. But what if you discover that you're the villain in only certain relationships, certain situations, certain circumstances? What if you do discover that? What if you leave today and you're going, oh no, oh God, what do I do with this? I am the absolute villain. I'm the reason my children are the way they are. I'm the reason my wife doesn't want to kiss me. I'm the reason my husband, his arms have become shorter in the bedroom. I'm the reason that what if you discover you're the villain? And some of you don't even like what I just said. You're like, I'm not the reason. You're married. We all share in this participation in falsehood and many things. What if you're the reason as a coach that your kids quit? What if you're the reason as a teacher that your kids don't want to be? What if you are? What if you come face to face with the fact that you are broken? Oh! You could free to get up right now and walk out if you're not broken. Any of you who are perfect, I'd like you to, what's the joke? Sign my Bible? Isn't that the old joke? Every one of us are broken. Well, as it turns out, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus also said that very specific recognition that you have brokenness, that you are the villain in your own story in many ways, that you can't pull it off on your own. Jesus said that moment of revelation is the beginning of our walk with Christ. We've said here time and time again in the Beatitudes, He has said the number one defining characteristic of a true citizen of the kingdom of heaven, A true Christ follower is living in constant awareness of our own desperate need for Jesus and His grace. Is that not true? That's the number one thing. The greatest gift I can give you today then is to tell you, here's the mirror. You've got some stuff. Go. And for you then to embrace it and say, I will go because I need Jesus. So my going is not going to be running like it has been. I'm going to flee that and pursue Jesus. What if that's the truth today? Because it is the truth. You see, as it turns out, our Creator created us for a relationship. He created us for a relationship with Him, which leads to healthy relationship with others. If you don't get this one correct, you will always self-limit what this feels like. I'll say it again. If you don't get this one with God correct, you will always self-limit the potential you can have for intimacy with others. And so here's my point, and it's in your bulletin, which I have to go with this. My wife is always putting there, this is not a bulletin, because I told her it wasn't. You guys see that? Did you see it now? She is so passive-aggressive. Today she wrote, this is a bulletin. So if you look, there it is. There's the truth. Intimacy, is that what I wrote? Intimacy with the truth? Is that on there? Yeah. Intimacy with the truth, Jesus, is the path to true intimacy. Intimacy with the truth is the path. And you go, I thought we were in 3 John. Here we go. Let's go into John now with 2 minutes left. 3 John 1:12. Demetrius has delivered the scroll that contains 3 John to a real person named Gaius. He has been talking about another individual that he will meet with, and he will talk to him when he gets there because he is focused on himself. He is prideful. He's controlling the emotional temperature, even manipulating people to kick them out of the church for his own desires. But then he says this to Gaius about Demetrius. He says, Demetrius has received a good testimony from everyone and from the truth itself. And we testify too, and you know that our testimony is true. Demetrius has received a good report. I'm going to ask you guys, what more do you want? I want you to ask one day, I would do funerals, when your kids stand up, what do you want them to say about you? A good report. When you guys are absent from me and your name comes up, what do you want me to say about you? A good report. A good testimony. And you want it to be based upon what? The truth. You don't want me to have to lie. I want you guys to be able to say about me this, that, and this, and that. I live my life in such a way that I want you guys to say things about me that are great. And I mean that I'm loving, that I'm considerate, that I'll show up. These are strategies I have. And over the years, it stopped being about me. The truth is I will do all those things, small t, small t. The truth is, though, I do them because I fully believe in the truth. Big T, big T. I want a good report. And intimacy with the truth is the path to true intimacy. And I've discovered the more I lean into Jesus, the better my relationships with you guys become. Have you discovered that in your own lives? It's better. The walls come crashing down when my friends go, hey, Don's show, and I'm like, I know, I hate that guy. Let's kill him again together, right? It just becomes better. He received a good report, Demetrius, and it was his relationship with the truth that resulted in the truth. Because here's what it was like to be on the other side of Demetrius. It was obviously a joy. It was obviously a joy for John to be on the other side of Demetrius. He received a good report. And I'm going to make it really real to you. Isn't that what we all want Jesus to give us when we show up? Now, hold on. What do we all want to specifically hear? And I don't know if that's what we will hear, but this is how it was phrased to us by the apostles. We want him to say when we enter into his presence, what? Well done, my good and faithful servant. What were you good at? This life. What were you faithful to? These relationships. If you are good and are faithful in what you have been given now, which are the relationships in your life, you will one day receive a good report. And for some of you, who the mirror has been pointed towards your past today, things that you think cannot be fixed, things that you think cannot be mended, I am here to tell you that there are many people in here who would swear to you, it is never too late. that the God we serve is in the restoration business, is he not? In fact, I have said, and if you look at our mission statement, you'll see the word, we believe in resurrection. Something has to die first, and that's painful. God can create something new and will promise in everything. And if you today allow him to pursue you in such a way that is painful for many of us, I can promise you the relationships here and now will turn around as you pursue Jesus and allow the work to be done. And one day, I can promise you, you will receive the greatest report of all when he says, well done, my good and faithful servant. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for everything you've given us. Thank you for the relationships in my life. May I value them. May I treasure them. If there's something I first and foremost need to get rid of, and as I spoke this message, you didn't have to alphabetize it, but I got them. So many of them I have to work on, and I will, and I give you that commitment today. And thank you for being faithful to always hold a mirror. We love you. May we serve you always. I crave for everyone in here to stand alongside as we applaud or whatever we do when we hear my good and faithful servant. In Jesus' name, amen.